Welcome back to this new inspirational video. Today I wanted to go on with chapter 17 from the book The Science of Being Great. Now Wallace titled this More About Thought, and he's going to explain to you again the absolute importance of considering what it means to think and what influence thinking has over our lives. Because whenever we think about doing great things, we are setting up an attractive force inside of our consciousness through which we can actually one day end up doing great things on a physical scale. So you can have an idea in your mind of greatness, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you will manifest it instantly, but you can start to manifest elements of this. This is another concept we talk about all the time, but I figured, it seems that Wallace figured himself that it was very important to remind the reader of this once more before he finally goes on to some other points. And after this video, I'll just share one more chapter of this book and then we're done, and we're going to move on to a next piece of literature, as I mentioned in a previous video, that is going to be great. But until then, let's go over this chapter so we can learn and remind ourselves again of a few very important points to remember. Now Wallace started out this chapter by saying, "Give place here to some further consideration of thought. You will never become great until your own thoughts make you great, and therefore it is of the first importance that you should think. You will never do great things in the external world until you think great things in the internal world. And you will never think great things until you think about truth, about the verities. To think great things, you must be absolutely sincere, and to be sincere, you must know that your intentions are right. Insincere or false thinking is never great, however logical and brilliant it may be. The first and most important step is to seek the truth about human relations, to know what you ought to be to other men and what they ought to be to you. This brings you back to the search for a right viewpoint. You should study organic and social evolution." Well, that's one way to go about it. But what's much simpler is to just understand that when you hold a concept in your mind, technically, in a way, it starts evolving. What we're dealing with as humans are mental and spiritual evolutions for the most part. Perhaps physically a human being will evolve as well. Who knows? Scientists talk about that it's possible maybe over, thousands or even longer than that it will take before that happens, they would say in certain studies and documentaries about the human race. But what's really happening with you and me right now is that there's a form of mental evolution going on. So when he says you should study organic and social evolution, you could also just keep it a little more simplistic by understanding that the idea you hold in your mind, whatever that dream is, will evolve over time as long as you hold on to it. That's the power of consciousness. That is how it operates. As you attract more and more ideas, you are essentially in a state of evolution on a mental plane yourself. You're becoming a different, better person, at least if your ideas are of a positive nature. You see, you can also have destructive ideas, and we see this happen all the time in the world, where people do destructive things because they've been thinking and imagining about doing perhaps horrifying things to others, and then we are witnesses to what happens. But we want to focus it on doing great things, and this is how things evolve. Now, he did give some suggestions here, saying that you should read Darwin and Walter Thomas Mills. And when you read think the whole matter over until you see the world of things and man in the right way. Think about what God is doing until you can see what He is doing. Your next step is to think yourself into the right personal attitude. Your viewpoint tells you what the right attitude is, and obedience to the soul puts you into it. It is only by making a complete consecration of yourself to the highest that is within you that you can attain to sincere thinking. So long as you know you are selfish in your aims, or dishonest or crooked in any way in your intentions or practices, your thinking will be false and your thoughts will have no power. Think about the way you are doing things, about all your intentions, purposes and practices until you know that they are right. The fact of his own complete unity with God is one that no person can grasp without deep and sustained thinking. Anyone can accept the proposition in a superficial way, but to feel and realize a vital comprehension of it is another matter. It is easy to think of going outside of yourself to meet God, but it's not easy to think of going inside yourself to meet God. But God is there, and in the Holy of Holies of your own soul, you may meet Him face to face. It is a tremendous thing. This fact that all you need is already within you, that you do not have to consider how to get the power to do what you want to do or to make yourself what you want to be. You have only to consider how to use the power you have in the right way. And there's nothing to do but to begin. Use your perception of truth. You can see so much more truth today and then live fully up to that, and you will see more truth tomorrow. To rid yourself of the old false ideas, you will have to think a great deal about the value of man, the greatness and worth of a human soul. You must cease from looking at human mistakes and look at successes. Cease from seeing faults and see virtues. You can no longer look upon men and women as lost and ruined beings that are descending into hell. You must come to regard them as shining souls who are ascending toward heaven. It will require some exercise of willpower to do this, but this is the legitimate use of the will, to decide what you will think about and how you will think. The function of the will is to direct thought. Think about the good side of man, the lovely, attractive part, and exert your will in refusing to think of anything else in connection with them. I know of no one who has attained to so much on this one point as Eugene V. Debs, twice the socialist candidate for the President of the United States. Now, no appeal for help is ever made to him in vain. No one receives from him an unkind or rude word. You cannot come into his presence without being made sensible of his deep and kindly personal interest in you. Every person, be he millionaire, grimy working man, or toil-worn woman, receives the radiant warmth of a brotherly affection that is sincere and true. No ragged child speaks to him on the streets without receiving instant and tender recognition. He loves man. This has made him the leading figure in a great movement, the beloved hero of a million hearts, and will give him a deathless name. It is a great thing to love man, and it is only achieved by thought. No thing can make you great but thought. And now that is the end of the chapter. He actually ended this chapter with a bunch of quotes from different authors and writers from history that all talk about the importance power of thought in their own ways. But again, this little piece of text reminds you of what to do. As he said at the beginning of this chapter, this is so important. You will never do great things in the external world until you think great things in the internal world. Now, is this really true? This is exactly true. I mean, how can you go to a better direction in life if you don't think about what that better direction means? How can you attain to greatness in your own way if you have no idea of what greatness would mean in your line of work or in your life to begin with? And this is the interesting part, is that you don't necessarily have to ask somebody else what it means to be great. You have to ask yourself what that means and have to be sincere indeed. You have to feel this on a spiritual level, on a soul level. That's what he's talking about. So you have to go within your own consciousness to be sincerely wanting to know how you can be a great person in your own way. How you can treat people in a better and a greater way. This is what it's all about with this book. And now the interesting part is if you apply this in your life, no matter what your goals are, again, because of the state of mind you will be in by acting and treating people in a great way, you will also start to feel more and more uplifted within your own being, because you're allowing that sort of frequency to move with and through you. You are becoming essentially one with the frequency of greatness, whatever that means, from your soul level. We have very similar ideas about it in the end because we are all one. However, we can have different ways of expressing it through our own lives. That's the beautiful part. But ultimately it has to come from the soul. And that's what I do with my videos as well. I don't usually really think up what I'm going to make videos on, what subject. I have the idea of a video going through my mind. So then I think it. I know it's there. I caught it inside consciousness. And then I act upon it, and I let the words come from the soul. I would describe it like that. I just let them come from my heart. I don't overthink what I'm gonna say. I just let the words flow from within. And that's essentially what happened, because I'm allowing myself to think of doing great things in my own way. And you can do the same. So it's going to be expressed in your own unique way once you start doing that. But again, we have to understand it all starts first and foremost by thinking about what we want. about where we want to go, and then keeping our minds focused on that. That's why he talked about the willpower again briefly. That's how you use it. You use it to keep yourself thinking and acting in a certain way, in a great way. That's what he would say in The Science of Getting Rich. Now, that's all I have to say for this chapter. The rest, well, you can remind yourself of it by listening to his message, because it was pretty straightforward, and based on all the previous chapters, you should have a fairly good idea on what he's talking about by now. And then after this video, only one more chapter, and then we'll be done with The Science of Being Great, and we'll keep it on the channel, so you can always come back to it and study it if you want. Anyways, if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing to receive inspirational videos on a regular basis. And with that being said, dear viewer, never forget that we are the dreamers.